So a sinking fund is essentially a savings fund. And the idea is that we want to be able to save up to replace an asset in a business. Ow. And so we often set up sinking funds to help us contribute towards replacing or buying a new asset. It often isn't the only thing that we use or the only capital that we use to replace this asset, but it does help us save for. And because we're saving for the future, it is a future value calculation. Right, so that's what we chatted about Monday, and then we didn't manage to get to this example because we ran out of time, but that's okay because, like I said, we were going to do it today. So let's have a look at this example. So it says on the 2nd day of January 2015, a company bought a new printer for 150,000 rand. The value of the printer decreases by 20% annually on a reducing balance method. Now, like I said on Monday, this is often the context where we test depreciation. Depreciation is going to come up in finals and in your mock exams. Please just like accept that now. It's going to come up. Whether or not we test it as like an isolated, just work out the depreciated value, whether we test it within the context of sinking funds. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know. That depends on the exam setters, but you're going to get a depreciation question. While I'm thinking about this, because my brain, if you go onto testpapers.co.za, it hasn't been uploaded yet, but there is like a exam prediction for finals that obviously mathematicians, math teachers, experts within the subject are going to make predictions for the paper. I'm not saying use it as this is what the final paper is going to be, but use it as an extra resource because obviously what they're doing is they're taking into account previous years, what types of questions have been asked, what could we ask differently, how could we ask things differently. And so it is quite useful. As soon as I see it has been uploaded, I will put it onto our Google Classroom as well. But testpapers.co.za is a great place to go for past papers. The link is on Google Classroom, and they have got a 2025 exam prediction. So keep an eye out for that. But like I said, as soon as I see it, I will put it up for you guys as well. Right. So, anyways, that was my tangent. It says when the book value, and we'll chat about what that is in a second, of the printer is 49,152 rand, the company will replace the printer. Okay, so book value basically means the value of your depreciated item. Obviously, as you use a printer, wear and tear, all of that sort of stuff, it no longer contains or has the same value as it started. It's not brand new anymore. I don't know, a printer maybe has to have parts replaced or maybe some parts are slightly damaged, whatever. Its value decreases. And the value at a certain moment in time is what we call the book value. Okay, so it's the current value of the printer once depreciation or the item once depreciation has been taken into account. Okay, so the first question says, calculate the book value of the printer on the 2nd day of January 2017. Now, what I want you to notice is if we go to the time periods, both of them talk about the 2nd day of January. Okay, so essentially we can just go January 2015 to January 2017. The 2nd day of January, I hate when they do this because I do feel like it throws us off a little bit and it's very unnecessary information. Okay, we like whether it's the 2nd day, the 3rd day, the 7th day, it's still a year-long period from the 2nd day of Jan to the 2nd day of Jan. So it's a bit of a red herring in a sense, but we've got a 2-year period that we're trying to calculate the book value of. Right, so this is now where we need to go to our depreciation formulas. They're on the formula sheet, and we are looking at reducing balance. Now, reducing balance uses the compound method. Essentially, what that means is as your value decreases from one year to the next, when we now calculate depreciation for the next year, we're using the current value of the item. So what that means is it never actually gets to zero, which is often how real world depreciation works, because even when something no longer works, you can still sell it for like scrap parts. You'll sell it for nothing, but you can still get some value for the item. So A is equal to P. Depreciation is the formula that is the minus. So P1 minus I, and because it's reducing balance to the power of N. So A represents our book value. That's what we're trying to calculate. P is the current value of whatever asset is we're working with. And so we know that the current asset of the printer, or the current value of the printer rather, is 150,000 rand. The interest or the rate at which it depreciates is 20%. And because this is your English, because this is depreciation, this isn't like 20% compounded quarterly or anything that it's just 20% every year. Okay, so it's an annual rate of depreciation and it's for a 2-year period that we're trying to calculate. Now that minus is essentially going to take the value off of my 150,000 and decrease it by 20% for 2 years. And that takes me to 96,000 Rand. So over that 2-year period, our print has decreased in value by 54,000 Rand. Okay, it's almost two-thirds of the price it started out at. Right, so depreciation, very easy. It's a very easy calculation. But just remember it's the minus reducing balance, the one with the to the power end. If it's straight line, then it is the simple interest formula. So 1 minus I times n. So question B says, at the beginning of which year will the company have to replace the printer? Show all calculations. So now we need to go back to our information, and it said to us in the third sentence, when the book value of the printer is 149,100, no, those aren't the numbers. When the book value of the printer is 49,152 Rand, the company will replace it. Now they're giving us a book value. So I'm telling you that A is equal to 49,152 Rand. We know that the p-value is the 150,000. That's where it originally started. And it's asking at the beginning of which year. So this is asking me to calculate an n value. Right, so I want you guys to try this for me. We're still going to use the reducing balance formula. Hate I've written that formula, but it's fine. We're still using the reducing balance formula, but now we're trying to solve for n. So see if you can solve for n for me. Nice, Colin. Well done. Just give me a thumbs up when we're done. Okay, I'm giving you 1 more minute and then I'm gonna have a look. Like I said, just give me a thumbs up when we're done. Alrighty, so our book value is the 49,152. The starting amount of this printer brand new was 150,000. The depreciation rate 20%, and we're solving for n. Now remember, when we're solving for an exponent, particularly in finance, we're going to have to use logs. Okay, this one you can actually do as an exponential equation without needing logs, but the exponent that you end up working with is just not nice. Okay, so my advice is just use logs. That's what they're there for. So first things first, I'm going to divide both sides by 150,000, and that gives me 0.32768 is equal to, and let's actually just write this simplified. So 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8 to power n. If you don't write it simplified, it doesn't matter. And now we're going to use our logs. So log of the base 0.8 to the 0.32768 will be equal to n. And so n is equal to 5 years. So after 5 years, they will need to replace this printer. Right, question C then says the cost of a similar, actually, let's grab a highlighter before we just get too enthusiastic. Oh, sorry, that was a weird noise, if you heard that. The cost of a similar printer will be 280,000 Rand at the beginning of 2020. The company will use the 49,152 Rand that it will receive from the sale of the old printer to cover some of the cost of replacing the printer. The company sets up a sinking fund to cover the balance, so to cover whatever else they still need. The sinking fund pays interest at 8.5% per annum compounded quarterly. Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank you, Leander. I panicked. I'm going to finish reading this question and then I will come back to what you said. Yes. The first deposit was made on the 2nd of April 2015 and every 3 months thereafter. So it's every quarter until 2 January 2020. Calculate the amount that should be deposited every 3 months to have enough money. So basically, what is your monthly installment, your quarterly installment? Right, yes, Luanda, thank you so much. The question did in fact ask, and this is why it's so important to read the damn question, at the beginning of which year? So they bought the printer in 2015. It's 5 years later that we plan on replacing it. So yes, at the beginning of 2020. Thank you for actually reading the question. I don't know how to, oh, there we go. Okay, so guys, I would have lost a mark there because I did not answer the question. So please, please make sure you do actually answer it. I know sometimes we kind of get into the groove and we're just going, we're doing our calculations, but please make sure you do answer the question. Okay. So we have now in question C a situation where we want to buy this new printer for the 280,000 Rand. We're going to use some of what we are going to get from selling the old printer, but obviously 49,152 Rand is not enough to cover the new cost. So we set up a savings account. Because it's a sinking fund, we're using our future value formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write our future value formula so that we know what variables we're needing to find. Because obviously once we can kind of make like a little checklist or a tick list of what it is we need, it is going to help us. Nope. Right, so this is our formula. And remember the question said calculate the amount that should be deposited. So we're trying to find X. So we shouldn't, or yeah, we shouldn't have a value for X from this information. So let's see what we need to find. We need to find the amount that we need to save. That's what the future value means. It's how much are we wanting to have saved? How much should our account eventually yield? Now, we know that we need 280,000 Rand to cover the cost of this printer. However, we are going to contribute the 49,000. So we're going to take that 49,152 Rand off because I don't need to save that amount. I already have that amount from selling my old printer. And so when I subtract those two, I end up that I only actually need to save 230,848 Rand. So that's going to be my future value amount that I'm going to substitute into this formula. We then need our I value, and that was 8% per annum compounded quarterly. So we have to take, no, it wasn't 8.5%. So 0,085 divided by 4, relatively straightforward. And then we need our N value. Okay, so this is where we need to be careful. And I'm actually going to draw a number line. And grade 12s, in all honesty, count. Okay, if you need to count it on your fingers, count it on your fingers. So the first deposit was made on the 2nd of April, 2015. And we're making deposits every quarter, so every 3 months. So April, May, June, July. Our next deposit, 2nd July, 2015. I'm not going to write second each time. 3 months later is then October 2015. 3 months later, January 2016. Okay. And then what we can see is that, remember this will be the 2nd of Jan, we can see that we make payments up until the 2nd of January 2020. So from January 2016 to the 2nd of January 2020, that's quite easy. That's a 4-year period. Okay, so that's easy enough to go and calculate. We're going to come back to this in a second. What we then have to bear in mind is that we have got 1, 2, 3 other payments that we still need to account for. Okay. Goodness gracious. So from this point, what we're going to now do is we're going to say, okay, cool, how many quarters is that? So we've got 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and then we have the 4 years every quarter. So if we say 4 times 4, we get 16. Right? Let's just make sure this makes sense to everyone. Are we happy so far? Just give me a thumbs up if we're happy. Okay, so I got a thumbs up. Let me just take this off and make sure. Right, can we give me a thumbs up if we understand why I've written these dates here? So we make a payment on the 2nd of April. So there's a payment. And then we're making every 3 months. So 3 months later, we make another payment on the 2nd of July. 3 months later, another payment on the 2nd of October. And then 3 months later, another payment on the 2nd of Jan 2016. Just give me a thumbs up if that makes sense according to the payments. Okay, I'm looking out for the people who gave me a thumbs down. I want to see that those people understand this first bit. The rest of you, if you understand and if you can get your payments, you're welcome to move on, but I'm explaining this. Okay, cool. So I saw thumbs up. We then need to go. So if we count what I've highlighted, this is 4 quarterly payments so far. Quarterly payments. Okay, I've highlighted 4 payments. I've made 4 quarterly payments. Now, when I go from 2 Jan, I need to go to all the way to the 2nd of January 2020. Now, because I'm at 2 Jan, the counting now becomes a lot easier. So 2 Jan 2016 to 2 Jan 2017 is 1 year, and there's, I don't know why I had to math that, there's 4 quarters in 1 year. 2 Jan 2017 to 2 Jan 2018 is another 4 quarters. 2 Jan 2018 to 2019, another 4 quarters. And 2 Jan 2019 to 2 Jan 2020. So many things happening here. We've got another 4 quarters. Are we happy with that? Give me a thumbs up if we're happy. Okay, good. So what have we established? Well, we have established that I've already made the 4 quarterly payments that I've highlighted in yellow. That took me up to the 2nd of Jan 2016. Then in the next year, I made another quarter payments, another, another. So if I take everything I've essentially highlighted in yellow and add it up, that's the number of quarterly payments I'm making. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So N in this case is going to be equal to 20 quarterly payments, because remember, N represents how often you make your deposit or your installment payment. And because we're doing that 20 times over these quarters, over the period that has been given to us, N is equal to 20. And guys, honestly, sometimes the easiest way to know what your N value is, unless it's easy, like 2020 to 2025, 5 years, there's nothing weird going on here. If we need to count it out like this one, because we started in April, but then we ended in January, write out a number line for yourself. Get to the date that makes sense for you to then just do the year jumps thereafter. So once I got to the 2nd Jan, that was fine because I knew I needed to end on the 2nd of Jan and I didn't need to make it any more complicated. Right, so give me a thumbs up if we all understand why it's 20 or that it is 20 quarterly payments. Okay, good. And like I say, Great Halls, on Monday, we had a look at a past paper question and I showed you the memo. One of those independent marks we often give you is for your N value. Make sure you get N. Even if you have to draw a little number line for yourself and you count it on your fingers, whatever, make sure you do it properly. And if this will take you an extra 30 seconds, okay, it's not going to waste a huge amount of time, but rather get it right to make sure you are doing it properly. Okay, so now we have all of our values and we can substitute into our future value formula. So the future value we worked out was that 230,848. That's the amount I need to have saved. We are looking for X, which is being multiplied by 1 plus my interest, which is 8.5% compounded quarterly. And this is now to the power of 20, as we've just discussed, minus 1, all over that I value. Remember, Gertals, there are different ways to write this I value. I prefer to write it like this, but it doesn't matter. As long as you get across that it is a percentage and the compounding period, we don't really care. All right, so from here, we now solve. Now, most of us would now go multiply both sides by the denominator 0,085 over 4, and then divide everything by that square bracket. Remember, I did explain to you that technically what you can do, because the X is being multiplied by this orange block, technically what we could do is we could actually just divide the left-hand side by that whole orange block. You don't have to do it like that. It's entirely up to you. But either way, we end up with an X value, so a quarterly installment of 9,383 Rand 26 cents. Right, so from there, it's easy. Okay, once we figured out the ends and the future value and all of that, it's literally substitution to your formula and go. But it is trickier trying to get to the N value, the FE value. And this is why read carefully. And if you need to draw the number line, okay, the number line is a tool for you. We don't need it to be neat. We don't really even need to see it, but it is a tool for you to make your life easier. So rather make your life easier. Okay, can I just get a thumbs up if we're happy? Nice, good tools. Well done. Okay, and like I say, finance, it gets easier with practice. Okay, I know I started the section of, oh, I'm not very good at finance. I already feel 10 times more confident just because we've been doing it. Obviously, I've been teaching finance for a while, so my confidence comes a lot quicker. But just by doing it, it does become easier. All right, so practice it. Make sure you ask questions. Go onto testpapers.za. Go onto that study clicks that I showed you a little while ago and just practice the finance stuff. Use the resources available to you. All right. Okay, I've just made it a bit smaller so you can screenshot everything. And then we're going to have a look at some past paper type questions of what you can expect in your exams. Alrighty. And Gretel's another little like piece of advice here. Like you can use it if you feel it's necessary. Kind of like what we did over here, where we kind of did a little checklist for ourselves in terms of what values do we have to substitute in. Use it as a checklist for yourself so you can tick off your variables that you're solving for and making sure that you do actually have everything that you need. This is how I introduce finance, particularly in grade 10. I make them do a checklist. APIN. Fill in what you know, what are you missing, that's what you're solving for, and you just are making sure that you do actually have all of your information. All right, let's have a look. All right, so this was not that long ago, 2022. I know it feels long ago, but really not that long ago. Final paper. I don't know. I thought there clearly seemed to be more to that sentence, but there wasn't. Alrighty. The only thing I will say to you is, I'm coming back to this, please don't chase, is as you can see, these are all the formulas of your formula sheet. The one formula that is not on your formula sheet is your conversion from nominal to effective. This comes up a lot more in grade 11, but with that being said, we definitely can ask it. And I think if I remember correctly, they did ask it in last year's final paper. I could be talking nonsense, but I'm fairly certain that they did. Like I say, I could be wrong, but this is a formula that's not on the formula sheet, but you do need to know. All right, so please make sure you do remember that. This has got nothing to do with the question we're about to do, but it was in my head. So just remember, we do need to know that formula. Okay, so usually your finance starts off nice and easy. So you're going to try this one by yourselves in a second. But finance, we don't throw you straight into the deep end. We started off nice and easy. Generally, it's like a easy compound interest calculation, not even future value, nothing like that. Just your normal compound interest calculation or your normal compound interest formula. It might be a depreciation question, but usually we ease you into it. Okay, we're not going to frighten you. And if you think about this, this is 4 out of the potential 15 marks. Okay, so that's a third of those marks already done, sorted. You've got. Sorry, I need to plug my laptop, but obviously it's too much happening. So the first question should be attainable for everyone. So let's have a look. It says 12,000 Rand was invested in a fund that paid M% per annum compounded quarterly. After 24 months, the value of the investment was 13,459 Rand. Determine the value of M. Okay, so there's nothing about monthly installments. There's nothing about saving for the future, nothing like that. We're investing money, we're saving, but there's no monthly or regular payment that we're using. So this is not an annuity, which means we don't use future value. We just use normal compound interest. So this is a full marker. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. I want you to try and find the value of M for me. Remember, ask questions if you're not sure. Put your answers in the chat so that I can check, so that you can help each other out. But let's try find M. All right, I like what we're thinking here in terms of needing to understand the time period. But exactly as Callan said, because that's already in months, we need to figure out how many quarters are in those months. So I would do what Callan said. I would first decide what is that as 2 years, and then ask myself how many quarters do I have in 2 years. And the reason I'm saying quarters is because remember it says compounded quarterly. Okay, so we're considering a quarterly compounding period here. So I always go back to what the years is, and then I go from there. If you can figure out how many quarters are in 24 months, great. All right. But I personally find it easier to go back to years and then go from there. It gives you the same answer. So it doesn't matter. Right, just give me a thumbs up if we're done. Okay, I saw two, so it might need another minute or three. Okay, one more minute and then we're having a look. Alrighty, let's have a see. So I've just done this so that you can see the mark allocation because we know I forget to do mark allocations. Right, so this is how we would answer it. So remember, 24 months is 2 years. Over 2 years, you have four, no, you, in 1 year, you've got 4 quarters. In 2 years, you've got 8 quarters. Right. So you can do it with the 24 months. There's 3 months per quarter. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So you get 8 months either way, right? Depends what you're comfortable with. What you can see, and this is what I said to you earlier, that n value is an independent mark. You get a mark for saying n is 8. Okay? Nice, guys. Well done. So it's really important that we get n. For questions like this, we are checking that you can substitute into correct formula. So you haven't used simple interest, you haven't used like present value, something like that. This mark over here is kind of like your working out mark, right? There's it's not necessarily for that specific step, but it is your understanding of the maths, particularly taking the 8th root. So understanding that to get rid of the exponent, we would have to take the 8th root. And then a final mark for m is equal to 5,78. And I saw that on the chat, so well done. Right, so that's it. Again, just take note of the fact that we give marks for n. Right, I'll come back for screenshots in a second. Let's have a look at this next one. So it says on the 31st of January 2022, Tino deposited 1,000 Rand into an account that paid interest at 7.5% per annum compounded monthly. He continued depositing 1,000 Rand on the last day of every month. He will make his last deposit on the 31st of December 2022. Will Tino have sufficient funds in the account on the 1st of January 2023 to buy a new computer that costs 13,000 Rand? Justify your answer by means of appropriate calculation. So you're going to try this by yourself, but we're going to just talk through it. If you want to just get going, that's absolutely fine. But if you need a little bit of help, just listen up. So because we're saving for something, future value. Okay, so x, 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 all over I. So this is where I'm saying if you feel a bit unsure, if you feel a little bit not so confident, let's make a checklist for ourselves. So we've got future value. What are we trying to save up for? Well, English. What are we trying to save up for? We're trying to save up for our laptop. But our goal, whilst is the 13 Rand, the question is asking, will he have that amount of money? Okay. So we're not going to use the 13,000 Rand because we don't yet know if these 1,000 Rand deposits are actually going to get us to 13,000 Rand. We want to find what this future value amount would be. What would the amount we started with be once we have made all of our deposits? So we are trying to find the future value. We don't know what it is. We know what our goal is, but we don't actually know if we will have that amount with the deposits we're making. So that leads us onto our X value. We are making 1,000 Rand deposits at the end of every month. Now remember, the norm is that I'll get to my words now. The norm is that you make your deposits at the end of every month. And this is what's happening. At the end of January, deposited. Every single month on the last day, deposit. The last deposit on the end of the month, at the end of the month. So this is a completely normal situation. It's only if there's an immediate payment or if we have weird delayed payments or something like that, we have to be careful, but this is normal. It's starting at the end of the month and we're making it at regular intervals. Now, if you were to count, and we'll do this together, from the 31st of January, first deposit, end of Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. That is 12 months. So that's what I'm saying. You can count on your fingers. That's 12 months, which means that our end value is 12. We are making 12 regular payments into this account. But again, 31st of Jan to 31st of December, that is a 1 year long period. And it's a 1 year long period, in case you are thinking, no, 31st of Jan to 31st of Jan is a year long period. It's 12-month period because you made the payments on the 31st of Jan. We then need to figure out what our I value is. We were given the interest rates, 0.075% compounded monthly. And now we have all of the information that we need to go and substitute and find our future value and to confirm whether or not he will actually have enough money in the account. Okay, so that's the way I want you to take over. I've essentially worked out the first 2 marks with you. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Let's work out what our FE value was and see if we can make a conclusion about whether or not you will have enough money. Remember, ask your questions, put your answers in the chat. That's all absolutely fine. Nice, guys. Thank you for those thumbs up. I'm just going to give the last minute and then we'll have a look. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, so again, I'm just putting this here so we can see mark allocations. This is how we would work it out. And like I said, I've done the first 2 marks with you. So you're getting a mark for understanding your interest rate needs to be compounded. So that division by 12 and understanding its percentage. You're getting a mark for your N value. Quite literally substitute in, get an answer and make a conclusion, which was he won't be able to buy the computer because he's 578 Rand 78 cents short. You don't need to actually do that calculation. You basically just need to say he doesn't have enough money to buy the calculator, the computer. Gosh, imagine a calculator was 13,000 Rand. But you do need to make the conclusion because remember the question said, will there be sufficient funds to justify your answer? This is your that thing is your justification, and then you've made your conclusion. Okay. Just because otherwise it's going to get very small, and I think maybe we're already at the point of it's very small. I'm going to do that so we can screenshot those first 2, and then we'll have a look at the last one. And guys, as you can see, this is already 8 of, and in this case, this was a 14 mark finance section. So this is 8 of those 14 marks. So you've already got over 50% for finance through the basic calculations. The last question is generally not a hard question, but it generally is the trickier of the finance questions. But we have got whatever 8 out of 16. Geez, that's embarrassing. Yeah. You're there. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at this next one. Like I said, this is kind of where we amp it up a little bit, but it's not undoable. We just read carefully. So Tabo plans to buy a car that costs 250,000 Rand. He will pay a deposit of 15% and take out a loan for the balance. The interest on the loan is 13% per annum compounded monthly. So a couple things. Deposit. NB. If we pay a deposit, the bank, the company, whatever, cannot charge us interest on that amount. So that's the first thing we need to remember. Second thing, this is a loan, so we're going to be working with present value. Now, this was quite a nice question in the sense that it led us into what we needed to find. So the first question said calculate the value of the loan. So when we're talking about the value of the loan in this context, what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to take the cash price, which is the 250,000 Rand, and we want to deduct that deposit. And we want to deduct that deposit because we have paid the deposit. We cannot be charged interest on that 15% of 250,000 Rand. So that's what we need to do. First, we need to work out our deposit. Actually, you can do this. Right, this is the 1 marker, 2 minutes. Work out the deposit and then work out the loan amount once you have that. 2 minutes. All right, so hopefully we all got 212,500 Rand. Your deposit amount was 37,500 Rand. So 15% of 25,000 is 37,500, and you get your loan amount of 212,500. The other way to look at it, grade 11, no, you're not grade 11s, grade 12s, is, and I always forget this, and it's so stupid because it's so nice and easy. If you're paying 15%, it means that your loan is the remaining 85%. So you could just work out 85% of 250,000 and get your answer immediately. Okay. I always forget to do this. And I don't know why, because it's so silly and it's such an easy way to do it. But anyways, either one is absolutely fine. Right. The next question is now this chunky question. So it's a 5-marker. It says, the first repayment will be made 6 months after the loan has been granted. We're going to come back to that sentence in a second. The loan will be repaid over a period of 6 years after it has been granted. Calculate the monthly installment. Okay, so we're going to come to the first sentence in a second. I'm jumping to the second. We've got a 6-year period on this loan. I'm making monthly installments, which basically means that if I say 6 times 12, technically, if I start as per a normal loan situation, paying 1 month after the loan has been granted, I will have 72 payments. But the problem is I am not starting 1 month after the loan is granted. I am essentially starting 6 months after. Okay. So what we need to bear in mind is that there is a period of time where I am not making those monthly installments. I'm not repaying this loan. 6 months. We're going to chat about what happens in those 6 months now. The first month is when the loan is being granted. So technically, I'm missing 5 installments because remember, 6 months. The first, okay, so let's just make sure we're understanding. We take out our loan. In the first month, the loan is being granted and we would start our normal payments 1 month after. So I'm missing 5 repayments on this loan. Okay. So what that means is I now need to subtract 5 from the 72, and that takes me to 67 installments that I'm making on this loan because of the fact that I missed essentially the 6 months worth. I missed the granting of the loan, for lack of a better descriptor, and then I'm missing those first 5 installments. Can you just give me a thumbs up if that makes sense so far? Okay, so I'm going to say it again. The first 6 months is missed. Okay, the first repayment is made 6 months after. In the first month, remember, nothing happens in the first month because it's usually in the first month we don't do anything with the loan. We only make the first repayment 1 month after the loan has been granted. So that first month is like, I don't want to say we don't consider it because we're going to consider it in a second, but I don't need to make a payment in that first month anyways. But once we've gone to that loan and that first month has happened, I now have 5 more months where I have to make repayments, but in this case didn't. And so because I'm missing out on 5 repayments, it means that my number of repayments I would have made needs to decrease. I now need to pay off this loan in a shorter amount of time. And so I subtract 5 months, the 5 that I missed, to get how many months I still have left to pay off this loan. So we now only have 67 months to pay off this loan. Does that make more sense to the people who are a bit confused? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Right, so now we've got n equals 67. We know what our n value is. The next thing that we need to be careful of is the fact that this loan has been taken out. Okay, you've taken that money, you've taken your 212,500 Rand. Thank you so much. I'm going to buy my car. But the problem is you have this money, you're not paying it back. And remember, that money earns interest. Okay, so what we need to remember with a delayed start, our repayments, is that unfortunately for us, this 212,500 Rand is going to earn 6 months worth of interest that we still need to pay back. And this is why delaying the starting of your loan repayments is not necessarily a great thing. because not only do you now have less time to pay it off, you owe more interest. And so what that means is that your monthly repayments is going to be higher than if you had just started paying normally. Okay, so this 212,500 Rand is just going to sit there. You've loaned the amount. And as it's sitting there, it's earning more and more interest the more you aren't repaying on this loan. And so what we need to remember now is that we need to add this interest to this amount. Now, because it isn't a monthly installment that's happening, nothing weird. It's literally just a normal compound interest calculation. Okay, so we're going to add 6 months worth of interest at 13% compounded monthly. And this is for 6 months. So to the power 6, or you could think of it as to the power 6. I see now started the sentence. Now I can't remember what the rest of my sentence was. To the power 5. Sorry. Remember, nothing happens in that first month. The loan's still being granted. So it's only the 5 months where we are earning interest. Okay. So we've got the interest being accrued, all the rest of it, like I said, so 6 months. The money's still taken out, so we've still got that money for the first 6 months. The first month is like a non-starter. We're granting the loan, paperwork's being done, all of this. If you ever take out a loan, you will see that this is the case. The next 5 months, so 5 months is now where we've missed our payments and we're earning interest. Okay, so there's 5 months of not so great stuff happening. And what this now does is it increases how much I owe. So now I owe 224,262 Rand 53 cents. This is what is now owed on my loan with all of that interest added. And what that means is this becomes my present value amount in my present value formula. Because I've added all the interest on, this is what I now owe with all that interest now added on. And so now I'm going to use this amount in my calculation for working out the monthly installments. All right. Give me a thumbs up if that all makes sense. Sorry, it sounded like someone was at my window, which would have been very creepy. I did see thumbs up. If there was a thumbs down, please just say so in the chat. I got distracted. I thought someone was at my window. Okay, so now we've got our present value. So now we can substitute into our formula. So we've got our 224,262 and 53 cents that we owe. We're trying to work out the monthly repayments. And remember, this is present value now. So it's 1 minus 1 plus that 13% compounded monthly to the power of, we worked out in negative 67 all over our I value. Okay, now again, guys, if you wanted to, you could just go and divide both sides by this blue rectangle because X has been multiplied by that value. If you want to do it step by step, do it step by step. There's nothing wrong with that. But we end up with a monthly repayment of 4,724 Rand 96 cents. Okay. Now, just for your interest sake, this is not obviously something that you need to work out. If, let's say, for example, the repayments hadn't been delayed, so we weren't decreasing the amount of time, we weren't increasing the amount of interest, we just took out our loan for the 212,500. Those monthly repayments then would have been, so I can actually do this on my calculator. I need to learn how to use this calculator properly. Not that that's your problem, I'm just talking to myself. Right, so your monthly repayments would go down to 4,265 Rand 75 cents, which is you saving about 500 Rand every month. And this is why paying on time, not leaving payments to then accumulate interest is such a good thing when taking out a loan. It has this knock-on effect. And if you now think about that, that was about 460 Rand that you're saving every single month. And that would be a period of 72 months. You save over 50,000 Rand paying upfront, no delays, no defaults on payments. And again, this is why it's kind of like a good thing to keep on track of your loans. Right, but I'm just going to wait there for you guys to take a screenshot. If you have any questions, please ask. But it is 22, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. We are going to be starting in probability on Monday. Probability probably only a week. It's not very long. We'll see how we go. And then we are going to be starting with a mock preparation. So please make sure you fill in that Google form. Otherwise, I'm just going to do what I think needs to be revised for mocks. Obviously, the goal will be to revise everything. But yes, if I don't know, then I can't plan accordingly. Alrighty. Otherwise, guys, have an awesome evening. I will see you on Monday. Have an awesome rest of your week, awesome weekend. I will see you guys on Monday. And obviously, if you've got questions, please still ask. But yeah, otherwise, have a good one.